first time we met was when I was thinking about launching the show.
Yeah.
First ever
That's
time.
right. That's
yeah,
right.
That would be the first
That's
time
right.
with John Sykes.
That's right. So
and the team.
You were sort of, I think, wrapping your head around podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
You had already done different media types and formats.
Mm-hmm.
And podcasting was a few years back. So
Mm-hmm.
it's been exploding for several years, but it was really just starting to explode. And you reached out and we sort of started to talk about why people podcast and
Mm-hmm.
why you might do that too. And then you jumped in.
Absolutely.
And
That's
created
it.
a hit.
Yeah, I was taking meetings, just learning about the industry, speaking to people who'd already had established incredible shows and doing amazing things. And it was a great learning conversation and kind of getting that enthusiastic burst. And then when we came back to work together 4 years later, it was really, really a wonderful relationship.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And what makes that working relationship so good between the two of you now?
I think for me, it's easy because when we were thinking about finding the right partner for the podcast this time round, we were in a different position where we've created something that we really value, that we believe in. And it was about finding a partner that we really believed could walk with us and enhance that, help us do things that we hadn't done before, someone who is creatively involved and also strategically involved. So a real partner. Yeah. And I think what I've loved about working with Conal and iHeart is that they're highly creative. They think about the industry very differently. Of course, they have a great established track record. And they're really thinking about this synergy between radio and podcasting and thinking about media and podcasting. And so I think the way they think about it and the resources that they have to help connect and support creators and talent has been second to none.
Yeah, I mean, on our side, there's a bunch of reasons. We are good, I think, at launching new shows that no one's ever heard of before and making them big. We're also pretty good at taking somebody that's established trust with a bunch of listeners and trying to make that bigger. And so that was this case where Jay had launched this phenomenal show, honestly, years ahead of its time in terms of using podcasting as a medium to talk openly and loudly about health and wellness. And our role in that was to be as creative and innovative a partner as possible, but first and foremost, just to get him an even bigger audience. So iHeart's good at that because it has these massive channels, these literally mass reach channels of broadcast radio, IRL events from Jingle Ball to metaverse events. And so we have all these ways of talking to fans of all shapes and sizes across the United States. And we can put that to work for somebody like Jay. And for us, back to the beginning though, being able to come out of COVID, I think we're coming out of COVID, maybe? Being able to come out of that and seize this moment, I think, in America where we can think a little bit differently about health and wellness, be a little more open about it, and maybe start to chip away at a solution for what I think we're all sort of recognizing now is an issue in our country, certainly in the world, but certainly in this country. The bigger impetus for this for us is to have a hand in that. And partnering with Jay felt like, wow, we might be able to really help. And so that's made it not just have business sense, but also just be a really cool thing to be a part of.
And you had touched on this, the answer to this next question, I believe, a moment ago, but I mean, do you think being so ahead of its time and just being very innovative in that health and wellness space, do you think that's what helped On Purpose really break through the way it has?
Yeah, podcasting is doing a lot of things right now. One, it's becoming a mass reach medium. That is a rare event in media for a new format, a new content type to become mass reach. I don't know in my career if there'll be another new mass reach medium. Lots of things have to align for that to happen. You have to have good, reliable hardware, software, creators, and audiences that all want the same thing. That happened in podcasting. Podcasting also sort of redefined or evolved a little bit what we think of as an influencer or a creator. And so because it was such a trusted, highly engaged medium, listeners really did lean in and really did trust the stuff that they were hearing. Because there was this new kind of relationship between a fan and a creator, lots of new creators in the mental health and wellness space began to migrate to it and use it. The first really, truly big anchor show like that was Jay's. And I think it gave permission to a lot of other shows, and the idea, honestly, to a lot of other shows that we are very proud to also support, to say, oh, this might be the right medium for me to talk about this hard thing that I want to talk about, but I'm not sure it's right for other mediums or as effective as other mediums as podcasting is. So for us, having that anchor show, this massive show with a huge engaged fan base, let us plant a really big flag in a very, very important genre for us.
And Jay, for you, I mean, if you could speak to that as well, I mean, the power of podcasting and just how much that has evolved even in a very short amount of time, how much has that impacted you and your work, and just where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, I think when I started my journey, I was making 4-minute videos, and there's only so much you can say in 4 minutes. And I think everyone can relate to that today, where you're making a TikTok that's 60 seconds or maybe even 15 seconds, and it's how much are you going to say and how intimately and deeply are you going to connect? And what I found so fascinating about podcasting as a medium is I feel like people who listen to me every day, some of them do, or every week, I feel like that person actually understands me in a deeper way. They understand my perspective. They know me to a certain degree in a way that you couldn't get through a 15-second clip or a 60-second clip. And so for me, that's been really powerful. And also being in someone's ear is extremely intimate. Like you think about speaking on the phone to someone. And we don't do a lot of that anymore. But when people are listening to you with their headphones on, or I know a lot of people, watch us on the TV even, that idea, I think it creates such an intimate bond with someone where their voice becomes a part of your life. And so I feel really grateful for everyone and anyone who's listening to the podcast, watching the podcast and consuming it, because it takes a lot of time and energy and effort, but I definitely know that there's a deeper connection there than across other platforms. And I've been fortunate to write books and do social media, and I find podcasts to be the most intimate.
Yeah, and talk to me a little bit more about that then. I mean, because obviously, as you continue to do something and you get better at it, I mean, what's something you know now about this particular medium that you wish you knew when you were starting?
Oh, good question. What do I wish I knew at the beginning? The first thing I'd say is you just have to start. I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to start. I was like, all right, well, who's the right partner? What do I know about this? Or I don't have a booker, I don't have this. And then I realized none of that was going to happen anyway, and I just had to start. And I think I could have started 6 months earlier, which probably would have been better. And I think a lot of new creators, or when they're entering new mediums, kind of get paralyzed by this idea of, I need everything perfectly set up. So that's one thing I wish I knew when I started. I'd say the other thing I wish I knew is that consistency is what created intimacy and brand in anything. I think people want to start with a bang and have a great start-off show, and the truth is that what On Purpose stands for today is far more clearer than what we were 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I think people feel that more. I think I feel it more. I think our guests feel it more. And so I think sometimes you want to start with this incredible moment and momentum. And I actually think consistency is far more of the magic to podcasting. Is, are you turning up and showing up for your community every single day or every single week? And if I had to add one more thing I wish I knew before I started, I'd say it's, you won't find, I think a lot of us, when we're finding new things, we're trying to find people who are experts in something. So you may find a team that's an expert in this or an expert in that. And I shifted my perspective to surround myself with a group of people that are obsessed with podcasts. So at the beginning, I was like, well, who has expertise? And it's a new industry. There's not many people who are truly podcast experts. That doesn't really exist. And so if you're looking around trying to hire a team of podcast experts or social media or any of these new mediums, it's very difficult to find them, but you can surround yourself. So today I feel my team are people who are just obsessed with podcasts. I mean, Helena's here. And I don't know anyone who listens to more podcasts, knows everything about every podcast. And, without someone like that on your team, it's hard to actually navigate it. It's about obsession, not about expertise at this point.
I think that's one of the coolest things about the podcast medium is that no one started out their career making podcasts in this medium. Everybody is coming from some other job they had, whether they were in film or in banking. And so it makes creative brainstorms like really interesting because you have all these different perspectives piling on to what is still a relatively new format. It's different than film and TV, where it's like That's all I've done my whole career. I know how to do this. Awesome too, because you can get really expert at that kind of a format, but you're not bringing totally disruptive, different new career perspectives to this industry. And so that has been cool. You're right. When we go to hire new producers, there's no like, there may be now a degree in podcast production, but there wasn't for a really long time. And that's made it really fresh and cool, I think.
Yeah, and if there was, it would be outdated in 6 months.
Yeah.
So the podcast degree would be useless by the time you graduate.
Useless.
Yeah.
But Conal, you talked also about the idea of having this very important anchor show for this space in terms of health and wellness. I mean, so how have you seen that area grow for iHeartMedia as On Purpose has continued on for you?
So about a year ago, we started to look at stats and figures that we've all seen and digested by now. But again, coming out of quarantine, you had about 3/4 of the United States saying we're in a mental health crisis. You had about half of the United States say, I know someone, either a family member or a friend who's in a mental health crisis. And then 1 out of 4 people saying, I am that person who is in a mental health crisis. Anybody with kids, I have 4 kids, they're young, all the way up to 18. I still consider them young, we were just talking about them. Sees that on the front lines. Kids are having a tough time. Because of the 3 or 4 years that we've just gone through and how they sort of navigate a world that is really disrupted and different. You can't not have the channels that we have as a media company or the creative power that somebody like Jay has and not want to do something about that. So Jay gave us permission, honestly, to build a thing that we call the Healthier Mind Network at iHeartMedia. That really is just us being able to go out and around the power and the huge engaged audience that Jay has, bring in other creators too. So an example is Dr. Laurie Santos. She has a show called The Happiness Lab. This was born out of a course she taught at Yale on the psychology of happiness, which quickly taught her that we have a mental health crisis in the United States because suddenly she had hundreds, thousands of kids enrolling in this course. Yes, to learn about the psychology of happiness, but also because they, in a self-aware sense, knew that they weren't okay and that they might need a course like that. This has given us permission to put out a shingle, as it were, and help a lot of other shows like that to build them, like we're trying to build Jay's, and that's meant the world to us. We're in a fun business. It's growing fast. We get to work with incredible creators. It's twice as awesome when you get to do something like this. That's like, we might actually be doing a good thing too. That's rare, and this is one of those cases. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, and I wanted to share something actually, because this was an idea that iHeart had that I absolutely fell in love with it when I heard it. On World Mental Health Day, Elvis Duran and I took over every radio station for an hour, and we had a conversation about mental health. And people could dial in, ask questions. We were talking about certain topics that were like the things that were affecting people the most. And to me, that was a real innovative, new form step. Imagine not listening to music for an hour. I feel sorry for everyone. but like to actually say, no, on World Mental Health Day, we're going to prioritize talking about mental health in a way that it never has before. And to me, that's, the proof in what Conal's saying here is that it's a real priority. And to me, to partner with a company and a team and a group of individuals who feel that it's such a priority that they're willing to take that kind of step forward for this conversation to take a step forward, to me, that's why I started doing what I do. So that was really awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Elvis Duran is the biggest broadcast radio show in New York City. It's syndicated across the country. He has mass reach. We're growing as a medium in podcasting, but there are mediums like radio that still have true, huge mass reach. So it was awesome for Elvis and Jay to say, you know what, let's take over an hour and just have a conversation about this on an even bigger, more amplified stage. I'll also cycle back to something you said about just the power of audio. We tend to, both as marketers and sometimes as creators, still today undervalue audio. 1/3 of all the media we consume is not sight, sound, and motion. It's just sound. 1/3 of the stuff we listen to or consume in any way, from all the shows you stream to the books you read, 1/3 of it is just sound. As as a company, iHeart, that does a lot of stuff, but our core value proposition is sound, is audio, whether it's broadcast radio or podcasting or streaming. We obsess about how people consume sound. What does it do to their brains? We obsess about it for creators' sake and for marketers' sake. How do creators use it? Is it effective? Is it cool? Is it fun? How do marketers use it? Does it drive an ROI for them? And we're starting to see back actual science. The parts of your brain that audio lights up are deeply associated with emotion and memory, more so than other media types, more so than sight, sound, and motion. Because you lean in and you help the creator make the asset when you're just listening, as opposed to being provided whole cloth and finished the asset. So it's this weirdly interactive medium where you are the production company that's collaborating with the creator all the time. And that makes it, I think, really prime for hard topics like mental health and wellness, like Jay's show.
And then finally, gentlemen, we've talked a lot about what has been accomplished so far with On Purpose, but I'm curious, like, what do you see as the next steps? What do you hope to accomplish next? What are the short-term goals, the long-term goals?
This is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and I've realized that often when you are able to accomplish things you never imagined, your goals were too small. And so it's a fun time being able to think, oh wow, we've been able to do some pretty phenomenal things, but we've got to dream bigger. And I think what that truly means for me is, to me, On Purpose, on one hand is a podcast, but as to what Conal was saying, it's almost a symbol of making health and wellness and mental health a mainstream conversation. And that's how I look at it, as opposed to it's a podcast with 2 episodes a week, which it is. There's an interview segment and a solo segment, but that's the mechanics and the tools. But really what it is saying these are the most important conversations that are happening. Whether you're tuning into your radio or you're reading press or media or whatever it may be, you will hear about what On Purpose is talking about. And so to me, it's about becoming that cultural symbol of saying, let's make sure that everyone inside every community, every town, every organization has the opportunity and feels comfortable and safe enough to talk about their mental health and well-being. And to me, that's the biggest goal, is that are we using this as a symbol of a safe space so that people all around the world can open up to their parents, they can open up to their kids, they can open up to their management, their teams, their employees, and say, hey, I heard this episode and that's how I'm feeling. Or I heard so-and-so on this episode of On Purpose that talked about their episode of this or what troubles they've been through and challenges, and that's how I've been feeling. I wanted to scale in that way.
I mean, for me, podcasting is still primarily associated with 3 or 4 genres: news, comedy, sports, and true crime. I want health and wellness to be that 5th genre that is as big, as prevalent, and as sort of podcast defining as anything that anybody makes. We're well on our way to get there, but that's from a business sense the goal. I think from a personal sense, I can't agree with what you said more. I mean, I hope that this kind of content is stuff that my sons and daughters consume without an ounce of embarrassment or apology, that it just becomes part of their daily, hourly lexicon, as much as sports and news and comedy is. That would be, it's ambitious, but that would be a goal to retire happy on, and I think we're on our way.